Welcome back to another explainer. So today, we're unpacking something that, well, almost all of us celebrate, but honestly, very few of us actually understand. We're going to explore the radical history and the totally incredible high-tech evolution of labor. We're taking a journey from the sheer, gritty exertion of the past straight into the highly advanced systems we rely on today.
Now, you might be wondering, is Labor Day literally just a day off for a barbecue? I mean, if you're watching this on your phone right now, maybe scrolling in portrait mode while you wait for a burger to cook, or just enjoying a long weekend, I actually want to challenge your perception of this holiday right out of the gate. You know, we kind of tend to view it as the unofficial end of summer, right? A day for huge retail sales and just kicking back. But let's bust that myth right now. The story of Labor Day is definitely not just about getting a Monday off. It's really the history of the sheer muscle of civilization demanding to be recognized as its soul. And to really get that, we have to look at what the world was actually like before this holiday even existed.
So let's hit a rapid-fire look at the harsh reality of the late 19th century, right at the absolute peak of the Industrial Revolution. 12. That is the number of hours the average American worker was logging on the job. 12 grueling hours a day of non-stop, repetitive, and just incredibly taxing physical exertion.
And 7, because those punishing 12-hour shifts, they weren't part of some standard 5-day work week. They were worked 7 days a week. There was absolutely no weekend, no time to recover, and this was often done in these incredibly cramped, poorly ventilated spaces where the sheer physical toll was just devastating. Then there's 5. And honestly, this is the number that really puts the whole thing into perspective for me. Children as young as 5 years old were working in these factories, and incredibly deep down in the coal mines. 5 years old, working in unimaginable conditions, and doing it all for an absolute pittance. This was the truly dark reality of the industrial age. Okay, let's dive into Section 1, a parade of defiance. So those harsh conditions were essentially a giant powder keg, and eventually, the people, who were literally moving the stone and steel of the world, decided they'd absolutely had enough. On September 5, 1882, 10,000 workers in New York City took an incredibly risky, unpaid leave of absence. They marched from City Hall all the way to Wendell's Elm Park for what became the very first unofficial Labor Day. And their demand was crystal clear. It was the famous 3/8. 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, and 8 hours for what they will. They were demanding the basic right to actually have a life outside of their labor. But, this movement didn't just happen overnight. It started with that really courageous march in 1882, sure, but the fight was long and brutal. Fast forward to 1894, a year completely marked by the violent and widespread Pullman strike, which severely disrupted rail traffic across the entire country. The tension between labor and industry basically reached a breaking point. And it was in the direct aftermath of all this unrest that President Grover Cleveland finally signed Labor Day into federal law. It was effectively a peace offering to the American workforce, finally acknowledging their power and their right to a recognized place in society.
Moving on to Section 2, from muscle to mind.
Today, we've moved totally out of those gritty, smoke-filled factories and into something sleek and modern. Labor has undergone just a massive transformation. Think about it. In the industrial age, the primary tool of labor was the sledgehammer. It was mass-produced, highly repetitive work that carried a massive physical toll. But today? Today, the tool is the diagnostic sensor. The entire nature of the work is now about high-precision installation, smart system management, and maintaining vital infrastructure. It's no longer just about the sheer exertion of calories to physically move stone and steel. Which brings us to Section 3, the execution phase. See, it's one thing for visionaries to sit in a fancy boardroom and make a grand plan, but who actually gets it done? Today's blue-collar worker is fundamentally different. They're what we call system integrators. The person providing labor today is this incredibly complex hybrid of a technician, an engineer, and a craftsman. These are the men and women who are integrating delicate fiber optics. They're the ones physically maintaining the giant server farms that power the cloud computing you're literally using to stream this explainer right now. Because let's be honest, modern civilization pretty much halts the second the Wi-Fi goes down. They install the complex security and automation systems that make our modern smart cities actually functional. Basically, they're the integrators of our physical world. We really love to celebrate the blueprint and those famous visionaries, right? The idea makers like Steve Jobs or Elon Musk. And look, their visions are incredibly important. But without the actual act of labor, without the doers who physically execute the plan, a blueprint is literally just ink on paper. It goes absolutely nowhere.
And that leads us perfectly into Section 4, celebrating the doers.
So, what you should really take away from this explainer is a fundamental reframing of this entire holiday. Labor Day isn't just a historical nod to the factory workers of the 1800s, though obviously we owe them a massive debt. It's actually a present-day celebration of the doers. Why does the act of labor matter so much today? Well, first, it's reliability over rhetoric. The world only progresses when a skilled technician actually ensures the power stays on, the bridge holds weight, and our digital systems remain totally secure. Second is the success of industry. That relies entirely on individuals taking true pride in applying tangible skills to solve real-world problems. And third, it's the middle-class engine. We can never forget that labor unions and the fight for workers' rights literally created the modern middle class. They shifted our entire economy from one of basic, grueling subsistence to one of massive growth, innovation, and consumption.
And this represents a massive cultural shift. We have completely moved past the totally outdated idea that labor is only for those who couldn't find an office job. That is simply not true anymore. In our current landscape, advanced labor is a highly skilled, high-stakes career path. Today's laborer is the person who understands the complex software code and knows exactly how to wire the physical hardware to make that code a reality. It requires both the mind and the muscle working in perfect unison.
So I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. The next time you flip a light switch, log onto a cloud server, or drive over a perfectly engineered bridge, ask yourself this. While the mind dreams, whose hands actually built the world you live in today? Labor Day is our moment to recognize that it's the hand, trained, skilled, and incredibly diligent, that takes our grandest human ambitions and makes them real. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. Now go enjoy that barbecue, but maybe with just a little more appreciation for the doers who made it all possible. Keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.